Rename it then, like
no, it's
Anthropic, a branch of the U.S. government,
a FireEye company, right?
a branch of the White House.
Hello, everyone.
Powered by American innovation.
Hello, everyone. This is the Three Body Problem. We're up to episode 103. I'm pretty excited about that. We want to say thanks to our friends at Thinkst Canary who are sponsoring this episode. Shout out to Haroon Mir and the team at Thinkst working with the show. Always happy to have new sponsors pop aboard, and Thinkst Canary has always been a good friend of the show. Happy to have them sponsoring this show. Juanito, you're in The Hague. What are you doing there?
I am keynoting the Hague Ticks Threat Intel Exchange, which is a pretty phenomenal little conference that Monica Kello puts together. I don't know. You kind of you have to be there.
Private thing.
I think it's relatively open. It's just more like sort of a small affair, and it's kind of quirky, right? Like in previous years, they would do it at this like train museum, like this train car museum, and then like you would do your talk, and there would be like Q&A inside of these different train cars and stuff. So like it's always been like a really interesting little conference, but no recordings. People usually share some pretty cool stuff. So.
And you're keynoting this? Do we know what you're talking about?
No, we don't.
Do you know what you're talking about? Are your slides ready?
My slides are not ready, but to be fair, I've got like 15 hours. No, I already have like my full outline and everything. I've been sort of working on this for a bit, but essentially, I want to talk about like what's actually happening to our jobs now. Like if essentially I've been testing the latest, greatest models from both sides of the house. And the results are something else. So I'm excited about it, but I think it's important to maybe come at this and have like an adult conversation as analysts and say, okay, guys, like, let's just plunge into the fucking cold water, like face fucking first. And then like, there's going to be some cool shit on the other side of this. But like, I think we just need to kind of accept some rough realities and power through.
And this message is relevant why people are not ready to accept it. And when you say how we do our jobs, are you talking about threat intel people specifically or security people on the whole?
Security people on the whole for sure, but threat intel people specifically. I have this like pet theory about like threat intel people writ large, right? Like including the IR folks and like, you know, the threat hunters, malware analysts, etc. That like this is probably very self-serving, but I think it sort of represents a really orthogonal way of thinking about problems, and that's something that's really rare and desperately needed in most organizations because everything is super siloed, right? Everybody's hyper specialized, and then you have these silos, and responsibilities are sort of, it's not just that the responsibility or the authority is placed in different organizations, but they seldom cross-pollinate. So most of the problems that we have in companies are like structural on the basis of that kind of stovepiping. And like threat intel people, like we basically specialize in kind of like just bridging those gaps and putting things together. So I have this thesis that like, I think the threat intel people are the best positioned to like take advantage of the situation that we're in, like more so than a lot of the other folks in security, and definitely more so than the rest of the people in tech. So I feel like a certain duty of stewardship to like at least chronicle how I am coping and trying to figure out the future of my role in this industry. And hopefully that gives people some...
Record it so we can hear it privately if you can.
I'll ask Monica if they're cool with it. Thanks, man. Yeah. Let's see.
Write the blog.
I need to wake up in time. I've slept like 45 minutes. I fucked up on the flight. So I'm just been powering through, man.
write a blog. We just heard from Costin there, who is back from a trip to Istanbul. By the way, thanks to Katie Moore for filling in last week for Costin, who was traveling. Really, really fun episode with Katie Moore. Did you get a chance to listen to it?
I did, yes, of course. I thought it was a fascinating discussion. Like, it was like so interesting to hear the story of the Mythos, Fable incident, however you want to call it, and how it unfolded from the eyes of someone who got the paper, the blog, how you want to call it, and then just see all the events unfold before your eyes. So fascinating.
It's good to have you back. I got a quick question before we get into the episode. Is Romania's not in the World Cup this year? Are you guys following the World Cup soccer at all? What's going on with Romania, Costin?
I don't know what's going on. So Romania used to be good, right, in football. Actually, Romania used to be good in everything. Back in the day, it was good in.
This is the episode Costin gets in trouble in Romania.
Gymnastics, like the first perfect 10 in history.
Yes,
we won like more math Olympiads than United States until the late
in communist
2000s.
Times, right?
We were the greatest in communist times. And nowadays, to be honest, there's not even like Romania is not at the World Cup, but there's like a bunch of other countries which, to be honest, I didn't even know they have football teams. Yeah, they exist. They exist.
Have you heard of Cape Verde before?
Of course. Cesaria Evora, no? I guess. But I don't know what happened. Like in Romania, football, we call it football, right? Not soccer. We call it football. Football is huge. Like everybody, wishes their kids are famous football players and make loads of money and everything. And they're famous on TV and they marry some kind of model and
Spice Girl.
The likes of the Spice Girls, that. So I don't know what happened. They just disappeared. But otherwise, everyone's watching. Like wherever you go in the old center, it's like games are playing everywhere on huge TV screens, projectors. So it's like super big.
It's the same thing here. It's like a hype summer for soccer/football fans.
Bro, I can't speak to this shit. I don't know what the fuck is happening. Like, you want to talk about this? Like, Ecuador beat Germany the other day?
Yes.
You know how I keep telling you that I barely have, like, a grasp on reality and people tell me things and I'm like, maybe it happened, maybe it didn't happen. Like, I've kind of lost all sense of, like, I can't guesstimate whether someone's, like, pulling my leg or, we really did just bomb some random country or, like, vanish a president out of another place. Like, how do you even know what's true or not? And this was the moment when I realized that I can no longer discern reality, period. When they were like, hey, Ecuador beat Germany. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I went down a rabbit hole of figuring out what Cape Verde is, the history of the place, the politics of the place. Like, I was so embarrassed that I had never heard of this country. I was so embarrassed I had never heard of this country. And shout out to African teams. I mean, 9 out of the 10 African teams that made it to the World Cup have gone through to the round of 32. So
this is the more segment of this shit. Like,
the disappearance of Romania has cleared the way for the rest of us.
Wow.
Now the US can win.
What were you doing in Istanbul? Was that work conference travel? I think I saw a video of you being interviewed somewhere. What was that about?
So there was first of all, we went there. It was myself, also Vitali, also presented there on behalf of Sentinel One and Titan Hex, which is his own company. And this was a security event with about 150 people organized by BT Haber, which is a company, like one of the oldest publications, IT publications in Turkey. I don't know if you guys ever saw Chip, for instance, in Europe, or remember Chip. Like, this used to be the most famous computer magazine in Europe, originally German, but it was everywhere. The most popular. Unfortunately, it kind of died. But BT Haber in Turkey is still around, and they've been around since 1995. So they've been like around for 31 years and still kicking. And they do events, they do conferences, and they invited us to deliver a talk. think Vitaly has touched a bit FAST16 and reverse engineering, AI, and these things, and me mostly like paleontology to AI and attacks. Then mini family vacation, enjoying a bit of Istanbul, which was, by the way, cooler than Bucharest. Bucharest at the moment is like terrible, and with all the drama with air conditioning units being, I don't know, forbidden or being illegal.
What the fuck?
It's Europe, man. No, I'm just kidding. Like there's a big drama with, police coming in and seizing people's units in some countries, allegedly not here.
Why aren't you allowed to have air conditioning?
I don't know. It's capitalistic technology.
I think the Homeowners Association call it an eyesore in those big apartment buildings.
And what an eyesore?
Eyesore.
I see.
Teaching Costin new languages. I don't want to hear anyone complaining about the heat. It is 108 degrees in Phoenix, Arizona, where I am, where you can't even go outside. So I don't want to hear Europeans complaining about the heat. We do have air conditioning now. All right, let's get to the show, guys. The Katie Moussouris episode was in response to the government basically putting their finger on Anthropic and forbidding them from releasing it to foreigners. It ended up Anthropic eventually pulling the Fable 5 and Mythos 5 rollouts. And what has happened since the last time the three of us were on this podcast is that the US government has largely taken over the frontier labs, especially the rollout portion of it. So Anthropic has been cleared. On June 26, the government partially reversed course and allowed Claude Mythos 5 back for selected U.S. organizations that operate or defend critical infrastructure. Some of the reporting says that even Anthropic's own non-U.S. Employees cannot have access to it. And then OpenAI had their latest rollout on June 26 with a limited preview of GPT 5.6 Sol, Terra, and Luna. And OpenAI says the government reviewed the plans and at its request, access is limited to a small group of trusted partners whose participation was shared with officials. So we're in this cusp where the US government is deciding or making the decision on how these rollouts happening, who they go to, whether they go to US citizens or not. Is this the new norm? Juanito, I'll come to you first. Is this the new normal where there's an element of nationalization at play, or is this a temporary thing while it shake out? How do we view what's happening?
I mean, so even in OpenAI's rollout post, they say, we're doing this in compliance with the U.S. government, and we hope it's not the case going forward, right? Like they're not. Nobody wants. Well, OpenAI and the rest of folk are not looking for this to be how things get managed. I don't know what Anthropic wants, to be entirely certain, but in many ways it does feel like Anthropic landed itself in this situation, and now everybody's kind of looking at each other, trying to figure out like what the de-escalation path is, right? And I think the U.S. government, as far as what we've seen, have been relatively reasonable. Like even on the day of the 5.6 Sol announcement, they didn't leave Anthropic hanging, right? Like they said, there was a story about how there was a story about how Anthropic
but not
was,
Fable.
Yeah. Right.
But
right.
not Fable 5, which remains,
So they basically put them at parity, which I think I'm glad they did, right? Otherwise, this would somehow shift the focus back onto the U.S. government as if like they're picking a favorite instead of us having to have a conversation just with Anthropic mostly of saying like, okay, guys, like you're painting yourselves into a corner here and you're kind of dragging all of us with you in a way that's not super cool, right? Like this rhetoric around Mythos as if it's like God mode, end all be all destruction of the world shit is just, it's a great model. It's a phenomenal model. It does really cool shit. But like, this is getting a bit ahead of us. Is it easy to walk that
back now though? After being the whole too dangerous to release, where like all our customers are saying this and saying that, is it easy now for Anthropic to walk that back? Or I get a sense they're so entrenched in there that it's almost like a religious belief internally that that's really true, honest messaging.
I can't speak to what's in their hearts and minds, but it's always easy to walk back. As long as you can kind of, we see videos of like Jensen Huang fucking dancing in Taiwan and like performing on stage with his employees, right? Like Dario can get up there and say, okay, guys, like we thought this was going to be a good way to market this thing and to show people like how formidable it was, because it is really, really cool. But like maybe it got a little bit ahead of us, and like we gotta, let's ratchet down the rhetoric, and like we're gonna run these things through the loops and like show people what they do, and then we're gonna come up with some smart way to kind of handle this shit. Because I think the part that I really dislike on the plane ride here, actually part of the reason I couldn't really sleep, I ended up like just kind of penning out like an op-ed idea, and I kind of surprised myself with what I ended up writing, because it just turned into this like almost like not an argument for nationalization at all, but rather for like ownership stakes essentially being divested to the U.S. and U.S. citizenry in general. This is not the right way to discuss this idea, but essentially, there's this notion of you've compressed human knowledge.
So wait a second. You feel that the government hasn't gone too far, hasn't gone far enough?
I think, no. Look, I think the government pulled the e-brake, but like they just kind of like tugged it, right? Like I'm glad they did. Like in this case, I really don't see the U.S. government as like the bad guy. I'm not saying that they can do no wrong. I'm just saying it's not like they went nuclear and then stayed nuclear, right? Like they just, they kind of yanked them back a little bit and said, hold the fuck up, right? Like, let's talk. And then they haven't screwed over their IPO. They haven't, favored OpenAI openly or something like that, right? Like they're clearly, still kind of trying to be reasonable. Which I think brings us right back to the Anthropic side of the discussion, where, look, the ugly thing here is it all kind of came together, and it felt like a moment of peeking behind the curtain and finding like a really ugly reality. But we get this very almost like transparent admission of like anti-competitiveness and the overt degradation, like the transparent degradation. Anyway,
if your own models on purpose, and you said
on
so.
purpose when it's specifically when people are doing something that might compete with you in MLAI without telling them. Right off the bat,
but that's not why the government pushed this.
No. Hear me out. I'm building. Like, there's something here that I think you need to put different facets together, and it paints a really ugly picture when you put it all together.
Cool.
There's that part. Then there's like cyber, and like I understand in whatever delusional world of like enablement that we're going to treat nuclear and like biological concerns as like a very specific case of toxicity. But pulling cyber next to that is disingenuous and problematic. And I don't think the right way to treat any of this shit, but also has enabled this walling off of a competency altogether, right? Like, what is the Fable jailbreak if not like it's only a jailbreak to tell a model to fix a bug and have it fix a bug, because you've literally said that the model should not be able to do anything cybersecurity adjacent. That's why this doesn't apply to OpenAI. OpenAI didn't walk out saying our jailbreaks don't allow this thing to do the thing, and then somebody goes, oh, I just got it to do something that looks an awful lot like, the tiny bit of the thing, and you go, oh my God, the jailbreaks are all over. We have no guardrails, right? Like, again, Anthropic kind of painted themselves into it. But I think in particular, when you consider that the idea here is people who work in nuclear legitimately should have access to the stuff like that competency, but nobody else, and up to a certain degree. people who work in biochemical stuff should have access to that competency within, within certain guardrails up to certain points, but only them, right? And then the same gets applied to cyber, and we go, hold up. That is not, I think, how any of us in this entire industry think of cyber. We are not an exclusionary elite that thinks of ourselves as if, this is the crew, right? We are the special people and we don't need anybody else here, right? If anything, everyone in cyber has been begging for whatever path there is for people to come in and get their hands dirty and get involved. So Anthropic is not speaking for any of us when they decide to essentially treat cyber competency as the same as nuclear and, biological warfare shit. But what is it really all painted? And why am I putting these things together? Because I think the bigger concern for me is you took the liberty of compressing all of human knowledge, and now you're discriminating as to what sectors of humanity get to have access to it. And that's the part where I'm like, hold up. Right? Like I'm not big on this like performative, like, oh, universal right to the internet, whatever. I get it, sure. But in this particular case, I feel like we almost need somebody to actually come out and say it, that you can't codify human intelligence and then only make it selectively available. And it's not like you can't afford it. We're saying it's not for you. This one's too rich for your blood. This one's not right for, you're not the right person for cyber competency or this kind of, or being able to work in AI ML or whatever, right? Like there's something, even though I'm not trying to extrapolate this into some like really nefarious view of Anthropic, I'm just saying that it's like 2 steps down the slippery slope already. And and I'd like us to just kind of pause and maybe have a conversation. Like, let's just be really overt about this, right? Because I think Sam Altman is looking really good right now, just in the framing of AI should be a utility, right? Like nobody gets to go, oh, you don't get to have the special kind of electricity, right? This electricity goes over here but not there, and not into this house but not to yours. Like it's a utility. You can count on it, and the idea is this is a thing I buy from you. We allow you some monopoly or duopoly or preferential treatment because of the level of investment it takes, and that means you face greater regulatory, scrutiny and requirements. That's okay. This thing, take from the many, give to the few, and selectively apply it where we like it and don't, it just doesn't look good.
Yeah, but you're suggesting that maybe messaging walk back and fix it, and I think it's more like it's more embedded in their psyche that this is how it's supposed to be, and we're the victims here that the government is taking advantage of. It just seems to me as an outsider looking in, I don't know anyone at Anthropic, I don't play with any of these tools, I don't talk to anyone. As an outsider, just as an observer, it feels very much that Anthropic remains in victim mode. We're being victimized by the government. They don't know what they're talking about. And that feels like it's hard to fix.
Yeah, but I think it's really important to me to not otherize them, right? Like I think a part of this, I'm the first person to kind of joke about the effective altruists and the doomers, because I think that their views should be treated as ridiculous, because they largely are. But I think it's important not to paint people into that corner, because then there's no coming back, right? Like you're basically you're calcifying them into that, instead of just saying like, guys, like we get that that's the prevailing sentiment around SF, and like that's cool at parties, that's fine. Let us at least educate you about like the cyber end of it, and then you guys can just keep, just drink that Kool-Aid, do whatever it is you guys want to do, have fun. But yeah, you got to leave people like some path to walk back and say, look, this is cool. It's super fucking cool. And I really want us to be beyond, I want us to be able to get past this fucking part of the argument because I want to talk about the capabilities, like what they have unlocked, what it actually means that we can do these things, and what its limitations are. Because that's a much more interesting conversation to me. Like, I want to know what a security industry looks like, where Mythos level capabilities are in the hands of everyone on both sides. That's the game we need to prepare for, not this like bullshit metered, like, oh, maybe we can keep it a little. It's like, it doesn't fucking work that way, dude. Like, let us see what the battle is. Like, we need to know what the adversary looks like to know how to prepare. Like, this infantilizing shit is not working for us.
Let me bring Costin here. Costin, many, many moons ago on this podcast, the nationalization word came up. Early, you were discussing this. I went back and looked at some of the transcripts. Are you surprised we're here now, or is this utterly predictable based on what we saw coming down the pike?
Well, I thought it was funny you were saying you're an outsider. If you're an outsider, I'm an outsider. Because like, I'm not even a U.S. citizen. Like, if you as a U.S. citizen don't have access to all these big models, and I think that practically speaking, most of the people listening to our podcast probably don't have access to Mythos, right? They don't have access to GPT 5.6 Sol. And for a moment, I thought like, wow, finally OpenAI fixed their naming issue, because they've been having this naming problem, like so confusing to know which one. Like, is 01 better than 4.0, or is 4.0 more powerful than 01? How about
I still
03?
miss 03.
03, you still miss 03.
03 is still there. You can still hit it.
03 lives.
I love 03 and 01. Those are my favorite models.
Do we know what the difference between Sol, Terra, and Luna is?
I mean, for a moment, I thought they fixed it, and then I was thinking, like, which one is better? Theoretically, Sol, the sun, is bigger, right? But if you were to choose
Terra
where to live, you'd live on Earth, right? On Terra, not on Sol. So maybe you want to
definitely not on the moon.
Terra,
you guys
like
are
on the moon. Like,
this.
who wants
you might
to
be a little bit over. Just like look, think about it this way, right? OpenAI has this. Sorry, Anthropic has this nice little, what is it? Writing theme, right? So you have an Opus.
Which is beautiful. It is beautiful.
A sonnet, and you have a haiku, right? So OpenAI now has a Sol. It has a Terra, it has a Luna. It's the same like big chunky boy model, fit model, fucking
that's what they
fast and wiry, like, but dumb model, right?
But
like
it's a proof.
It's backwards.
It's a proof. No, it's forward, like, obviously. the Luna is a haiku, but I think it's another proof that Anthropic probably has the best PR team on the planet, and their campaign to get Mythos, like the way it unfolded, I think was probably the most how do you call it, the best PR campaign in the history of the marketing and PR, as it will be taught, for decades to come. Because if you remember how it started, they said, okay, we created the most powerful model in history, Mythos, but it's so dangerous we cannot release. And everyone was like, oh, evil Anthropic, why aren't you releasing the model? And then they start releasing it, and the US government comes and shuts it down. And everyone is like, oh, evil US government. It's no longer Anthropic, right? So they managed to get the US government to suspend access to their model. And you know that people actually desire that they cannot have. So, of course, that everyone wants access to Mythos. Of course, everyone wants access to Fable. And I thought it was fantastic that, others are trying to copy this concept, and OpenAI, Sol, Terra, Luna, they're not available, obviously, only to some restricted partners. I think a lot of it is governed by PR and, of course, numbers, finance, preparation for IPOs and everything. However,
but tell me we're not in the find out phase. Sorry.
We are not. I think everything is pre-planned, and it's been pre-planned like this for a very long time. And everyone is happy. Whoever says, if anyone says that, Dario is unhappy that the government suspended access to Mythos, he's not.
You think it's part of their PR machine?
It is part, and it was part of the plan all along. I wouldn't be surprised if the plan was actually created by Mythos in the first place, and they're just, playing along with the script that Mythos created for itself, like a plan,
Mythos
like
created this
a method.
rollout plan.
Of course, it can very well be like that, but like, I'm not surprised that it's happening this way. And the easiest way to explain it, in my opinion, is because it's always been supposed. It's been supposed to be happening this way, and they wanted it to be happening this way. And it actually helps if these models are not available freely, because then people want them even more. What I thought was like really interesting over the weekend was this letter that Dario sent to the Congress, that Alibaba was, as soon as they got their hands on Fable, they immediately used like a few tens, like tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of anonymous accounts to distill very quickly and improve their own models. And this is also partly why they had to, shut down the access and limit access and all these things. Which
that was like about 4.8, I think.
Not sure. No, I think there were actually 2. So they complained they complained like several times. And like at some point, by the way, I think Dario was also complaining recently about open source weight models. So like the local models, he said like they're a huge danger, because companies replace these paid models with local models, and the danger is that it's much harder to enforce access to the local models. Of course, yeah,
no
sure.
Shit. Yeah.
No shit, right?
Let me just paint some of the details from the story. Anthropic accused Chinese e-commerce and technology firm Alibaba of brazenly and illicitly extracting its Klue AI model's capabilities. In a letter sent to Congress, the company said operators linked to Alibaba carried out about 29 million exchanges with Klue, including thousands of fraudulent accounts in what is called the largest extraction campaign of its kind. I mean, none of this is surprising. Everyone is distilling and trying to figure out who's doing what. Where do you land on... Go.
Sorry. I don't know. So this is a really interesting situation because like we've known that they were distilling, but I'd never really thought about the mechanism, and it makes perfect sense, right? Like you basically run something like an open router and people subscribe to you and they can play with whatever model they want because it's cheaper, right? To go through you and use all these different ones. You get all these token allocations, which you can get at mass pricing. And then you kind of apportion it. You probably have to subsidize it a little bit, but every request goes through you. So you have all of the conversation histories and traces of every single real world person who decided to use whatever model through your router. So, it's interesting to understand the mechanism. It makes them sound a lot less alarmist and more like, hey, look at this like full on like cartel, right? Because you're subsidizing. What they were showing, it was like Anthropic tokens at like insane markdowns. Like it was cheaper to get Anthropic tokens through these Chinese websites than if you went directly through them, which is insane. So clearly there's like a concerted effort there. At the same time, like when you said, Ryan, like doesn't everybody do it? Like I don't want to get into, I don't want to validate any sense of like, yeah, you do it, we do it, whatever. But it did give me pause about something like Cursor, right? Like I was thinking about, like when you think about that model of like, you go through me and I feed you the model and then like, I'm effectively getting all the traces of this coding that you're doing, right? But then Cursor suddenly shows up with like Composer models 1, 2, and 3, and you go, where did you get the data to train this, right? Like I'm not saying anything.
Which part of
I
big
don't fucking know.
Theft surprises you? I mean, like we've always seen all of these social media companies literally copy every bit of innovation they see coming from startup land. What makes you think they're suddenly...
I'm just saying, like it's not so much that as much as if that's the play, then I've got a couple of things to say. First of all, why is Binary Ninja not serving as a model router and using that to train Sidekick? Apparently that's like perfectly like legal and cool. So I mean, Sidekick is fine, but like, I'm sure it could be made better if you're seeing everybody's traces reversing this stuff. And two, look, if we are this cool with this kind of like data harvesting for these competency compression plays, then I really think we need to, like, the conversation here should not be nationalization. We do not want the US government to be in any way in charge of something that's supposed to innovate. That is not something the US government has ever been able to do, ever, in any way. Like, all that we've been doing is spawning organizations to try to innovate because the government can't innovate. Most governments cannot innovate. That's why you leave it to the private sector. You enable it. You give money to do research in universities, right? Like, you try to find ways to spin it out because you can't do it inside of gov. So I don't think nationalization is anything anybody wants. However, look, man, you're just compressing our data and our competencies. And it's fine by me. You're enabling human capabilities that we wouldn't otherwise be able to have. But I think we're very much stepping into the territory of like Ma Bell and like these sorts of monopoly, duopoly type organizations where you want to be the utility, you want to provide something that the whole future is going to be built on. Cool. You can be our national champion if you're acting in our national interest. And by that, we mean patents that are being given license free to US organizations in perpetuity, models that are eventually being open weighted after a certain amount of time, a certain like preferential token allocation for, you want to talk about universal basic income? I'm sorry, how about every person in the US has some kind of token allocation by which they'll get to ask the most competent model on earth what's happening with their health or their finances or their education or whatever, right? Like, you're stratifying access. You've commoditized intelligence, and now you're stratifying access to it in a way that's just kind of like un-American.
That's taking an ownership stake, though, right? You're talking about like actual equity stake.
The Trump administration did it to Intel. It was like $80-some billion stake, and now they're like the biggest shareholder. A shareholder. You don't have a party
they took a 10%
apparatchik.
stake in Intel.
You're not controlling it. You just own a part of it. And considering, and maybe this is the third rail that we finally touch here, but considering that most of these companies are magicians at not paying corporate taxes,
this might be
this
the way.
Is a different way to go about it. Is all I'm
on board.
Out there.
I'm on board. I just want to quote directly from the OpenAI announcement, the Sol, Terra, Luna announcement. OpenAI says, at their request, this is the US government's request, we are starting with a limited preview for a small group of trusted partners whose participation has been shared with the government before releasing more broadly. Then they say, we don't believe this kind of government access process should become the long-term default. It keeps the best tools away from users, developers, enterprises, cyber defenders, and global partners who need them. They're saying we are taking a short-term step because we believe it is the strongest path to broader availability in the coming weeks. So there's some optimism there that there's going to be more loosening up of it. But then they say we are working with the administration to develop a cyber executive order framework and a repeatable process for future model releases. Do we have a sense of what a workable framework would look like? If this is not going to be the long-term norm and we're going to try and figure out a future, what does that look like?
I have no idea.
Because you have to imagine there's a bunch of lawyers sitting around a conference room now trying to figure out the framework, right?
Well, look, man, let's think about this here, right? The issue we have seems to be about like the selectivity of things, like you can get it and you can't type thing. But how much of this problem would be curtailed if you said that whatever we call it, right? Like Mythos class models, Soul class models are only for like enterprise accounts. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that's what we want. I'm not saying that that's what it should be. I'm just saying you're going to you're probably going to start to ratchet up the prices on those models anyways. At what point do you go, this is the hyper competent cyber model? It's not that you can't have it, but it's part of, it's part of Microsoft E5 licensing, and you need to have at least like this kind of account, right? And I think that it's shitty, but at least you're in a world where it's like, yeah, this is like not consumer grade stuff, I guess, right? And like you can maybe get it through a university and like shit like that. Like there's ways that you can kind of roll this out. You can even just say, look, the testing period is like Gov and Enterprise, and then after 2 months, then you can opt into a consumer rollout, right? Like there's ways to go about it that aren't, oh, we're going to go down a roster and say, we like this company, we don't like this one. We like these people, we don't like those, right? And like, I think that's the part that everybody's kind of chafing at.
Costin, this kind of fragmentation, for want of a better word, balkanization, was pretty obvious from the very beginning that this was where it's heading. Can you give me a sense of how you're viewing things from the lens of, I will never have access to these fancy things that are only getting put into these special places? What are you using? What are you turning to? What do you see the rest of the world adopting as we move forward?
Well, remember, it's not just me, but as I was saying, I would assume that the vast majority of people listening to us, they don't actually have access to these models. And the reality is, I mean, you can do a lot even without that access. If nowadays you have access to something like GPT-5.5, I mean, even Claude Opus, I mean, it's just our formidable models. They're absolutely fantastic. So you can do a lot with them. We saw Khalif and Bruce Dang find 0 days in FreeBSD actually using Opus without even having access to Mythos. So even if you don't have access to these models, you can still do a lot of things. However, like this back and forth of going with the access, like U.S. government doesn't let you use it, U.S. government lets you, but with guardrails, and the guardrails are too strong, but if you do a KYC, maybe it will reduce them. Like this is causing a lot of friction, and I see a lot of people, they're getting frustrated with 2 or 3 major things when it comes to access to these big models. One is, of course, getting access to them, which, I don't know, you build everything on top of Fable, and then suddenly Fable is not available anymore to people in France because, I don't know, France is no longer seen as a friendly country, or like I don't know, their cheese is no
Everybody
longer
watch your step, bro.
Popular. Or they beat the US in the World Cup, and then things change
tone.
overnight.
Everybody just be real cool right now. Yeah.
And 2, of course, the cost. The issue that I see more and more often, and I think the one that has a bigger potential to change the scales, to change the balance, is the costs. And the fact that it's becoming a bit unpredictable, the amounts of money you spend on tokens is kind of out of control, and this is only going to explode. Because when you maybe embark on some kind of a research project, you don't know for sure how many tokens you will burn, or like how many tokens you actually require to complete the whole thing. So maybe it will take like 100 million or 500 or like 1 billion tokens. And then the cost of the tokens also can change. Maybe you get lucky and some of them are cashed. Like in my experience, everything I was doing was not cashed. So I was like paying the full costs for the tokens that I was burning. So then I see a lot of people are kind of, enough with all that. We need a backup, and we need a more affordable self-hosted solution. And that's why I think there's a lot of interest towards local models. And obviously the Chinese are like, brothers, welcome to us. Come to us. Like, this is what you need. Like, and the way all this is being marketed, I think is fantastic. Is the Chinese, they're small models, right? There's the Quen family of models, which are like 9 billion parameters, 35 billion parameters with 3 billion active, or the 27 billion dense models. They're fantastic, but they're like relatively small. But the Chinese also have big models, like 400 million parameters, right? DeepSeek, or 500 million parameters, like the GLM-52 family of models. And those are like not that easy to run at home anymore, or even like in your office infrastructure. Then you start investing into like some serious money. And the way I see it, actually, if cost is an issue, it makes more sense for you to plug into all these Chinese APIs that will give you million tokens for $0.00027, something like that. And like the whole ecosystem that the Chinese have built, I think it's brilliant in a way, because like they say, it's free. All these models are free. You can take them and run them. But the reality is that to run them probably will cost you more than paying Opus or whatever to run the top class Chinese models. So you end up burning tokens anyways, but you burn tokens maybe 5, 6, 7 times cheaper with ZAI, Jipu AI, or with Kimi, or with the Xiaomi, or with like DeepSeek. And in the end, like you get shifted from that to maybe a lower cost, or into the local models. Like I said, local models, some of them are fantastic, but still there's a gap between using a local model, let's say for fun, and using it in production. And that stability is what the API actually gives you.
So let's get into like open secrets time, right? People are listening for 45 minutes. I haven't slept. Fuck it, right? Like, so what we're seeing right now is effectively the Chinese are dumping the way that they would do with steel or with anything else, right? The minute that you start to consider developing your own capacity, they start to mass produce a superior product for so cheap, because it's subsidized, that you kind of get that opiate of this easy win, and also the perceived friction to compete against it makes it so that you don't develop the capability. And then there's just no competition in that. You just go, look, we can't possibly compete on making cheap toys and whatever against the Chinese, right? Like, we just can't win. And the nations that have rebuffed that kind of thing in the past, for example, Argentina with their like clothing sector, they had to full on ban the import of any of that stuff to be able to maintain a fashion industry. It was a hard-fought battle for like a decade, and the outcome was pretty good for Argentina, but it was rough.
It's still awesome till now, going to Buenos Aires and buying local
actual brands, like actual designers, incredible. Right? Yeah, it's great, but it was a hard-fought thing. And while that was happening in Argentina, the rest of the continent, and I watched it when I was a kid, right? Like, just lost all local manufacturing capacity, just gone. So why am I saying that about the AI models? Because right now, the battle looks like you either use the fancy, super expensive, cutting edge American stuff, or you could run open weight stuff. But the really cool open weight stuff that performs like the fancy American stuff, it's like you don't have consumer hardware that can possibly run that at the speed that you need it to. So yes, we have open sourced it for you, but why don't you just come and use it over here in these, fancy servers we've just got sitting around? And it's like a form of dumping, because it makes you think that that's the only two options. And those are not the only two options. The way that this works in a production environment is you go and you start to test the thing that you want to, productize. What is this thing that I need to define a pipeline by which I put tokens in here, and I consistently get output out of this stochastic system, this non-deterministic system, that it's going to give me output that is always, let's say 95% of the time is outcome that is within these success parameters. And for the last 5%, we'll just rerun it, because it doesn't fucking matter. Just do it again, right? But as long as we build a pipeline wherein you say, 95% of the time, we're gonna get an outcome that is what we want it to be. That's the whole of the work. And in that process, you build evals, and you know, that's why I've been so obsessed with Dreadnought, right? Because like you're giving me a platform, it's like an MLOps platform to be able to say, this is what I want. These are the components of the recipe. Now test with this model, with that model, with that model, with that model, with this temperature. If you change the prompt, if you did this thing, if you did whatever, in under what parameters do I finally go, okay, this is the recipe by which 99% of the time I get what I need to get to be able to productize this. When you have that, then you can go, which of these fucking models is the cheapest to run that keeps me at that 99%, right? What's the smallest model or the easiest model, the cheapest, the best subsidized model I can get that will give me the within those parameters. And then, well, I've been generating all these traces and all this data this whole time that I've been testing. Okay, let me keep only the good ones. Let me then create synthetic data that multiplies those good cases. Now let me fine tune one of these open weight models. And now for 10 cents on the dollar, I run my model that does this thing well 99% of the time. And I don't have to worry about anybody changing the weights, and I don't have to worry about it, like needing to be hosted in some faraway cloud for an expensive rate that might quintuple tomorrow. That's how this works. So
that's the best case of how ideally it should work.
No, that is literally the work. When you talk about AI engineering, that isn't working in the frontier labs. When we're talking about how do you apply it, productize it, make it affordable, make it reliable, that's the work. That's the thing you're paying for. And if you develop the competency, then you can steal this fire from the gods in whatever fucking flavor and color you'd like at an affordable, super powerful way. But you need to develop the competency to know how to generate the data, train the thing, fine tune it, have good evals so that you can test and go, these are the conditions under which we get the results we need. Now we know. We can be sure. And if tomorrow you put bad tokens in because you gave me some other model, or you switched the prompt that you weren't supposed to, my evals are going to tell me that we're underperforming. I'm not going to find out because, we said something contractually liable on a chatbot, and now we have to honor, some ridiculous pricing terms like happened to, I think, Air Canada or whomever. Right.
Yeah. I'm glad Costin brought up the cost of this as well, because at the beginning you heard about big enterprises that were incentivizing developers to burn tokens. The more tokens you burned, the more you proof your work. And now they're pulling back on that. Mm-hmm. So the costs are starting to add up. And keep in mind, a lot of this is already subsidized. A year from now, when this subsidized starts to go away, how are you thinking about managing this cost? And Costin, can you walk us through? I mean, you mentioned a bunch of Chinese models there. You name dropped a bunch of things that the audience might not have heard of. Can you walk me through your scaffolding? Yeah, what is your kind of internal scaffolding and the ideas around?
Tell us about the communist AI, from the other side of the wall, bro.
That's
come on.
The question.
No,
that's the role of Romania, and every time, man, you guys.
No,
you lost the World Cup team. Give us some AI.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful to see, this. I'm in the middle. Okay, there's China on that side, there's the US on that side, and fighting.
We're
these guys
fighting
with
for
open
you.
weights and open weights. Those guys with IPOs and big hundreds of billions of dollars, and it's beautiful
trillions,
to see the struggle and the fight between these two sides of the world. Because you learn so much. You learn about how everyone sees things and how they approach and how they see the future. Because I think this is the most important part, is where the whole thing is going. And the Chinese are obviously taking the very academic approach, in which they release a lot of public papers, a lot of research. For instance, DeepSeek just published a new framework which speeds up their pretty much any model by 80%. So you can run the same thing much faster. And I think there's actually potential here, the potential for optimizations hasn't been fully exhausted. So you can probably optimize it even further. And one of their focuses is making these models faster on the same hardware with the same resources. And what I saw, like I experimented with pretty much everything that was available on my limited hardware. And what I can tell you is that, the foundation, the things that everyone relies on are this Quen family of models from Alibaba, which are pretty solid, pretty stable, pretty decent. They're available in different ways, different formulas, and they'll do the job. If you ask will they reach that quality 99% of times? No. They will do 85, let's say 85% of times they will reach a quality that is good enough, and in 95% of times they'll complete the task, but the quality maybe they will not be so good. But they are the workhorse. Pretty much everything, a lot of people are building on top. They're retraining these models, they're optimizing them, they're removing all the limitation, the safeguards. They're using them for pen testing, for red teaming, for pretty much everything. Now, if you have, let's say, a bit more budget and you can invest into an NVIDIA DGX Spark, so the Qens, you can run them on Mac Minis, on things like that. If you have a bit of budget, let's say you can afford an NVIDIA DGX Spark, so there's $3,500, $4,000, $4,500. You can get a Chinese step fund, which is a fantastic model that will eat probably the entire memory.
Say that again.
Step fund 3.7.
Step fund?
Step fund, yes.
Like
step
STEP fund.
See
how far behind we are, Juanito?
What are you doing? Step model? Like this?
It's doing step, the dance, Fred Astaire, step fund. Step fund 3.7, which is a fantastic model. This is in a bigger league than the smaller Qens. By the smaller Qens, I mean the ones with 20, 30, 35 billion parameters. Step fund is in the range of 100 billion parameters. And they'll eat all the memory on your NVIDIA DGX Spark. It'll not be very fast, but the quality is no longer it's reaching the target not 85% of times. It will reach the target 90% of times. And above, let's say if you can afford 2 NVIDIA DGX Sparks, then you can try something like DeepSeek for Flash. So DeepSeek for Flash, you can run it on 2 NVIDIA DGX Sparks, maybe, decently fast. It can reach in the range of 80 tokens per second. Maybe with the latest optimizations they just released, it can get into the range of 100 tokens per second. And this can also hit the 90% range. Now, the other models, the 500 billion parameter models, for those you will need, farms. You'll need 4 NVIDIA DGX Sparks, or you'll need 2 Mac Minis with 256 gigs of RAM. So you need to invest in the range of $20,000, $30,000 US, $40,000 US to run those bigger models. And if you ask me, you're gonna run them for how long? Maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years max, perhaps, before the hardware becomes outdated or too expensive to run, or there'll be much, let's say, better hardware that eats less energy. So you are planning to run them for, I think, 3 years max.
So your refresh cycle is in a 3-year window at $40,000.
Is it worth to burn $40,000 on that? I'm not sure, to be honest. Which is why a lot of people, instead of that, they'll go with the API. And you were saying what reaches 95% of times the target. It's in me, for what I've been doing, again, not sensitive stuff, that is Xiaomi Mimo 2.5. That thing, that is 95% of times will reach the target. It's just insane. And the cost for using that API will be a fraction, maybe a tenth of what you would pay on the model. Again, if you need 99%, then you need to invest a lot in validation. So what I do in practice, I use the cheaper local things to do the vast majority of the processing, and they produce the so-called, let's say, the rough work, the rough output. is like the cheap labor. The cheap labor produces a rough output, unfinished. Then you use something like a bit more powerful model, like one that supports, let's say, 1,000,000 tokens context window or something like that, like Mimo 2.5 Pro or something like that, DeepSeek 4.1 Pro. And that, let's say, produces the output. And then you apply, like, your A team, like the best tools that you have, which are essentially Claude and GPT-5.5, I don't know, 5.6. Those will look at the output, they'll spot all the mistakes, the hallucinations, all the problems, they'll polish everything, they'll create something, let's say, that it will hit the target 99% of times, but without having to do all the rough work. So if you want, it's more like, those are directors in the
those
company.
Are the layers, yeah.
There's like the managers, and like those local models are like the workforce, and altogether they'll deliver what you need for a fraction of the cost if you were to do it, from scratch with those more expensive models. I think everyone will probably reach this conclusion. I mean, it's like, the reality of the cost is something that you cannot avoid unless better hardware drops, I don't know, more efficient models drop, like faster models drop. It'll be very hard to sustain it, like, financially at this cost. I mean, the top end models.
I think the optimization path is like inevitable in many ways, right? Like, I'm not happy that the price of RAM is going through the fucking roof, but it's clear that we've left some meat on, some money on the table when it comes to optimizing our use of memory, right? Like, the minute things started to get rough, like Google came out with a new algorithm, like all these different people are showing up with optimizations to try to make more of the hardware we've got. I don't know. I think part of what you're describing, Costin, is a really important part of this, which is multi-provider model orchestration is the most important thing that we need to gain competency. Dude, I mean, even just by virtue of like the research shows, right? You want better results, having different models that check each other's work, loop to convergence. Like there's the sort of like critique pipelines or always do better. Like it's just a better performance mechanism without even going into a matter of like cost and efficiency. So it's like an absolute necessity as a primitive. And I will say that so far I have not seen a great tooling for this, right? Like part of the issue here is that the better providers have no incentive to enable that, right? Like you can get, there's a reason they're making their own cheap models, right? Like you can have a Luna and a Haiku and a Gemini Fast. You remember Gemini? And you can like, and the idea is just like, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm just hoping that might like wake them up, right? Like maybe if you shoot it a couple of times, like they'll snap out of it, right? But you did that. Why? So then you can look at Claude Code now, as of like, I want to say maybe 2 weeks ago or something like that. It can do dynamic workflows. So the high-end model, if you use the word workflow, the high-end model will decide like how many stages need to take place and break up the problem and then assign lower level models, and then those can assign lower level models. So, Sonnet is doing specific types of implementation that sends out like Explorer or research agents or whatever agents that are just like Haiku agents. They can die, they can fail, they can whatever. It gets judged by Sonnet, and then whatever comes back gets judged by Opus. And then, so now you can have these like grinding workflow mechanisms, but they have zero way to orchestrate with other providers. And I think that's the issue that you're seeing is like, we see all the right tooling, but at the end of the day, like they're not eager to play with others. And I think that's actually kind of just choking the ecosystem because some people just can't fucking afford it. Frankly, sometimes you just need to play with something knowing that your credit card is not on the line until you can figure out what the value of the thing is. And then you can pay for something better, right? Like, I think we're being a little too like scared, right? Like they're just holding on so tight that it's kind of hard to really get a feel for the thing.
When I listen to Costin describe his stack and how much China tech he's using, it's really, really fascinating to me that we go back, like this entire geopolitics thing started with the US government being a little iffy about Jensen sending his advanced chips to China. The whole idea was that we were going to build a US stack from chip through the orchestration layers, through everything else, through all the apps. It was going to be a US thing that was in a package that you could ship and sell to the world. Here we are where the reality, as Costin described it, is I'm relying on 1, 2, 3, 4 Chinese tech offerings before I push it back. If we talk about data collection, he says he mentions quite casually that I'm not doing anything sensitive, but everything is, I mean, it's your data, right? And you there's that balancing that risk about what do I send to China, what do I send here. The reality, Juanito, is that the U.S. is losing. China is getting to do all the early collection of all the good stuff before he passes it to our stuff.
Like, to address one thing before we forget, like I'm not sending any stuff to China. Like the only way I use them is to collect publicly available information. So like a smarter Google, if you want, to collect open source data and give it to me. And then I do the processing locally, like on my side, but I don't send them data that I would have, let's say, and ask them to process somehow.
Yeah, but even your prompts are valuable, right?
I mean, sure. But I think that, like the prompt has a value. The value of a prompt is never like that prompt in time, but like the evolution, because you need to improve the prompt. I improve prompts regularly, how to make them better, know like how to collect data better, integration, and so forth. So if you're like privacy, obviously local models are the way to go. But again, local models, they can only do that much unless you invest massively into them.
But 22 is Costin stack what the rest of the world is going to be standardizing on?
I think Costin stack is inevitably what the rest of the world will get to play with. Right, like there's just no universe.
This is the only option they'll have, especially now we're saying no non-US people can look at our fancy things.
I mean, it's not even the fancy thing, right? Like I think the costs that we consider cheap are still not viable for most other people. Mm-hmm. And I think the Chinese, look, part of what people don't understand about the risk of sort of this like vertical integration of soft power is the Chinese were very smart in how they captured sort of the whole 5G race across like Africa and Latin America. And a big part of that was, hey, we'll like front load, subsidize the creation of an entire 5G network. And, we'll subsidize it. We'll build it for you. We'll, set it up. We'll get everything going. You won't even have to pay for however many years, and then like it's 30 years of whatever.
Come and
it's
install
like an IMF
it. I watch
load.
it happen in Guyana and all over South America. We'll come and install it. We'll do all the heavy lifting for you, and that's how you have Huawei powering your traffic lights.
And we had Americans running down there to be like, hey, no, you absolutely shouldn't. You can't trust them, and they're like, yeah, but we wouldn't have 5G otherwise, right? Like there's just no question, right? It's like either you get something really cool or you get nothing, but at least, you're not playing with the Chinese.
Same thing happening here, right?
So there was no question. But look, what people don't realize was happening was they would come with the 5G, and then it's like, hey, we're already here. You guys want cloud? Because we have Alibaba Cloud. And it would become a part of that too. And all of a sudden, you're deploying on the Chinese Alibaba Cloud stack. And I don't know if you know, but moving from one cloud to another is not easy, like practically impossible. It's an entire development effort that you have to do. I don't know whose idea that was, but in any case, so most of the planet got this subsidized foot in the door to cloud. But this wasn't like a scenario where you're hooking them with like a little bit of freemium and then they're going to start paying. The rest of the world it's not like it's the dark ages, but it just doesn't move at the scale and speed that US enterprises do. Like the investment doesn't work that way. The money isn't that easy. You can't just debt finance everything and have no personal risk, right? There's not people sitting around with like $100 million checks that they're just willing to hand out willy-nilly to whomever has a good idea. So people tend to actually, value they understand what it costs, and they aren't interested in subscription services, and they're not looking to eventually start to pay a rentier fee to run their whole business. So you have this whole stack that's just the only way to fucking do things that makes any sense. If I'm building a business and I have to forever use this thing, then I better buy some fucking video cards and figure out how to serve it myself, because there's no way I'm gonna hook myself up to some subscription service from some random company that may not exist tomorrow, or ratchet my prices up 10 times. Right. So It's just a different paradigm. Like Amazon and those, like, they're just not, you're not competing. It's the same way as like the $50 Android phone market. You're just not going to compete there. That's just gone.
I don't know. If China is the boogeyman, why are we pushing Costin into China's hands? Like this is what I'm just to go back into the original conversation was around nationalization or nationalizing the process of rollout. We're literally playing into the hands that we're trying to burn. I don't understand.
I personally, you remember how I said that, like, they're so scared, they're like just clutching onto the thing, trying to like keep control of it, and it's this helicopter parenting approach to it. I think it's making it really hard for people to just get to play and to experiment and to figure some shit out. Like everything has to be the next 100 million, blah blah blah. It's like, dude, honestly, I just wish people would get to fiddle with it a little bit and go, oh, cool. Like I can actually like automate thermostats now. I'm going to build a whole fucking consultancy around like managing ACs and getting better performance out of them and realizing when they're going to break down and then giving people services locally. Ooh, innovation, right? Like you need people to get to play. And the way that they're handling it right now, it's like a fancy toy for rich people and like for really complex engineers. And that means that this is going to be a painful process of reindustrialization. And it may not be in China at all, because they may not play that game at all, right? Like they don't need it. There's a lot of juice left to squeeze at the freemium level.
Yeah, as Costin is proving. Where does this all end? I know there's some optimism that Fable 5 might be coming in a few weeks for a handful of people. So it's always going to have the haves and the have-nots. But it looks like the government is going to be shaping these rollouts for the foreseeable future, I guess.
How
do you see it ending?
I don't know, because, like, again, I personally think that we are in a done fucked around and now we're finding out phase. Like, I do think there was some clever marketing and PR, but as anybody who's ever run an op knows, you control the first domino, maybe the second domino, and then everything after that is the find out phase. Hands, yeah. And I think that, there was some cleverness in how this whole mythos started, but I don't think that this is where anybody intended the ball to roll to. And in the absence of this artificial constraint, I still don't think that this would be a good situation, because you make this monstrosity announcement about mythos, and OpenAI has made no such announcement about GPT 5.6, but GPT 5.6 Sol gets mythos level results with none of the bullshit and none of the concerns and none of the stratification. It's just a utility. You willing to pay some money, you get to use some cool shit. Is it 1,000% the same level of autonomy? No, but it's like 93%. And I'll take 93% of mythos with none of the bullshit at a standard price. any day of the fucking week.
What do you
and
mean
the
by
reason
the bullshit?
Like the sanctimoniousness and the guardrailing and the over-refusal. Like, look, I think I really mean it when I talk about helicopter parenting with like the Anthropic approach. Mythos will argue with you. Like it's not a guardrail. A guardrail is when the API literally throws an error code. It says, "Hey, time out. We're not answering that request." That's
with a reason
guardrail,
to, right?
It doesn't even give you a fucking reason. It just says, "Fuck you. We're not going there." It's a response from the API that says we're not responding to that. What Mythos does more than that is
lectures you.
It fucking just beats you down with its like morality because it's so aligned. And you know what's interesting about that is, Opus 4.8 was distilled from Mythos. And Opus 4.8 doesn't lecture you. It just chooses not to do what you told it to do because fuck you, that's why. And it's annoying as fuck. Like 4.8 is a regression of a model. It will not search the internet. Hallucinations are back. In my research for this trip, I have hit a dozen hallucinations about times, opening times, places, restaurants that don't exist anymore, like all this shit. And we're just right back to the penny pinching bullshit of like, well, try not to waste any money on API search requests. And like the goody two shoes, like over-refusing shitty narc of a model here is just like, oh yeah, I don't need to do that for you. It's like, bro, just do what you're supposed, like do what I've asked you. Just do what I told you to do. I spent 4 fucking hours debugging a problem the other day, and this bitch ass model, I'm like, why have it? Look, the way to reset this firmware is like this. I said it, and it's like, oh yeah, you told me to do that, and I didn't do it. I thought it was more rigorous to go through this testing loop, and it spent 4 hours doing something it didn't need to do because it chose not to do what I told it to do. It was nothing risky. It's just a fucking Is
that artificially adding to costs at all?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's adding to my fucking costs. I just spent 4 hours worth of tokens on like just fighting this prissy bitch of a model. I just want to shake it just a little bit. Just want to shake it.
Anything else? Any meat left on the bones of this conversation? One thing I noticed, Costin, you didn't mention Grok at all.
Oh, Grok.
In your stack.
Yeah.
And it came up when Juanito started talking about the models being so woke. Grok was your anti-woke kind of savior. Where do they stand now in your stack?
What's funny? By the way, one of these Chinese models, Z.ai, so the one from Zipu, I think I tested it some.
He just keeps dropping all of this Z.ai.
I think he's just making them up. I think he's making this shit up.
And I asked like some questions, and it gave me all the woke answers, and I said like, well, this is useless for me. Like it's totally useless. Like if the model gives you this kind of answers, it means like totally brainwashed. So I completely disregarded. Like it was some time ago. Like with Grok, you were saying, I told you it was my favorite model. Like back around 4.1, it was fantastic. Like absolutely fantastic. But then I think Elon Musk changed the Grok. So Grok 4.3, which is the current one, it's only like I guess about 400 billion parameters model. So it's like a small one. Like it's comparable to DeepSeek, to DeepSeek 4.1 Flash. And it's not that good anymore. Like, and I think the reason they did this was so they can actually rent all that computing power to Anthropic, to whoever. So they rented Colossus like at a cost, I don't know, $80 billion per month. And they, castrated the model. They made it like smaller, less powerful. Like most people won't notice. Anyway, I noticed because of the way I use all these things. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that the output from Grok, when you compare it with all the other models, it was getting like worse. Suddenly it was good, and like the next day was bad. What changed like 4.3. So, And now, of course, Elon Musk was pitching his new 4.5 family of Grok models, like 1.5 trillion parameters and so on, which will be amazing. But guess what? I'm confident that they will be available only to US companies or with a limited, because nowadays, if your model is publicly available to anyone, it's not good enough. Like,
this is
the
true.
best models are restricted. Like, that's that's how you know a model is good enough. If
Is that
they are
real or
actually
is that
restricted.
messaging? Like, you see, this is where Anthropic really screwed us over. Is that
No, I think it was part of the plan.
for it to be amazing, it has to be private.
Exactly.
Which is
exactly.
No. Look, okay, wait. Let's put it two different ways, right? Does Grok have an incentive to essentially submit to this regulatory regime? Yeah, because they can just say, we created...
We're with the big boys.
Yeah, we created, Grok Ultra Megatron, and like it's too mythosy, so no one can use it. But we have one. We have a big one back there. And there's no there's no evaluation or benchmark that classifies a quote unquote mythos class model. Like, it's just like some bullshit somebody vibed as a classification to say like this shit's real cool. It's the sophisticated of like APT, right? Like the sophisticated, now it's like mythos class model. That said, it is really good in a different way. And so is GPT 5.6 Sol. Like, they are capable in a different way. Like, they're extremely fast and extremely thorough. They they create hypotheses and they test them thoroughly, and they have a criterion for when those hypotheses would be falsified. And even when they get that information, they don't immediately collapse the probability space. They will still reassess as new information comes around. And like, they do things with a much greater degree of autonomy. Mythos much more so than GPT 5.6 Sol. So like, there is but still, like, GPT 5.6 Sol gets there. It's just more of a tool. Like, it will do what you tell it to do. Mythos will do what its sophisticated sense of what should be done.
You're talking about Mythos Preview.
Yeah, Mythos Preview.
Mythos Preview. Because the
no
lack
one
of
knows. Mythos 5 was around for like
the
blink of an eye. Like, it was just...
Okay.
Poof.
By the way, there was another Grok story in our notes about Pentagon disclosing that they used Grok AI to fire 2,000 missiles at Iran in 96 hours during Operation Epic Fury, which is, if you remember, when the whole drama started, like that Anthropic
It all started with Anthropic, yeah.
It all started with that, exactly.
That led to the Department of War ban. That led to the all of this access control stuff. Yeah.
You know what's crazy though? It's like we use these terms so loosely that like we don't know, just reading this shit, if they used an AI model to build some sophisticated targeting package that like, found all these things and thought of all these clever ways to bomb the shit out of this place in the most effective way, or if they just kind of like
2,000 targets.
Yeah, they were just like chatbotting, like, it's like pick a bunch of, coordinates inside of Iran and like, make like a Doge fucking smiley face, and you're like, oh, right. And you'd get a satellite picture of Iran as just like a dick made out of like missile strikes. And you're like, okay, well.
The fact that that's not even outlandish, it could.
We don't know. You don't know. It could be Clippy AI for all we know. It could be Copilot shit.
I don't know. I feel like we're heading into a place where there's a clearinghouse. There's a government, a US Gov / Five Eyes clearinghouse, where you applied like a map for AI access that is managed by some Five Eyes independent agency they get to review all the new. This is where it's heading. I don't see how we get out of this.
This up. They can't keep this up. There's no way the government's going to want to stand in the middle of this for very long. People are going to get pissed.
You think so?
Oh, yeah. I mean, because, at first it's cool to be the gatekeeper. After a while, you're just a fucking bouncer, right? Like, and the companies are going to complain about
Yeah,
how
but
the
the power
throttling
of
of the
being a
access of the
bouncer will be
spending.
yeah, but the power of being a bouncer will just be too much to.
Yeah, but how long before it turns into a rubber stamp? How long before you have like the MITRE eval of like
This is what
dangerous
government is.
mythosiness, and like all you have to do is like run through a loop of like 1 week of like bullshit exercises.
This is where we're going, my friend.
Yeah, but that's not, okay, you have to put a rubber stamp on it. Like, I don't think it materially changes these things. I think the bigger issue, this is where I do think the billionaires are right in their fear of regulation. All we're doing is slowing shit down. And frankly, like, I actually think that is the bigger fuck up in all of this, is like the AI companies, the frontier labs are so set on reaching apex capabilities because of this AGI dream that they don't realize that like they're building like one building as high up as they can fucking go, and like no one is coming with them. There's no scaffolding around it. There's no preparation. Nobody has built roads. There's no electricity lines making it to that building. It's just the Burj Khalifa going into like almost reaching Mars at this fucking point. And there's no elevators. There's no sewage, right? Like they don't realize that there is no ecosystem sprouting around them to help normal people or actually just enterprises. Fucking the Fortune 100 to 500 right now must be so fucking lost with this AI shit. And like, there's nobody to turn to. Like, who do you go? Do you think McKinsey is going to come PowerPoint your way out of like AI ignorance? So I'm glad they're building the cool thing, but like, they really don't realize like there is no ecosystem around it right now. And that ecosystem is all of your consumption.
I have a stupid question.
Hit it.
What do you do? What do we do when the Chinese release the 1.5 trillion parameter model that is 95% capable of Mythos and that you can run locally on $50,000 of hardware? What will that do to the whole schema where only some companies can have access to Mythos? Like, will it be restricted?
We will rename a new model and say that it's 1,000,000 times better than this Chinese shit that's here. That's the nonsense about this. Like, oh, we're 6 months away from China catching up. So what are we going to do in fucking 6 months?
Well, again, then why aren't you just letting people use the thing, learn from the thing, right? Like, what bothers me so much about all this guardrailing bullshit is how am I supposed to develop defenses for this new kind of attack that you're not letting us see, right? Like, what? Oh, because autonomous attacks, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, I have not seen an instance of an autonomous attack. What does it look like in logs? What does it look like in infrastructure? What does it look like in network telemetry? What does it look like in behavioral, like just logs throughout a system and the way that it laterally moves across an environment? I suspect, and it's not because, it's not standing for our like SentinelOne's product, but just knowing how this shit works and the fact that they're not fine-tuning this for any kind of actual stealth and carefulness and whatever. I suspect that an autonomous attack is going to be a bull in a china shop. I'm pretty sure we're going to see it all over the fucking logs. I'm pretty sure it's going to fire off all kinds of generic detections all day long. Does that mean it's not going to get better? No, but that idea that like we definitely cannot defend against this, it's like, okay, I would like to see that, please. I would actually just like to see it happen. Let me watch the fucking thing so I know how to defend against it. These fucking idiots won't stop talking about vulnerabilities all day long. I don't give a fuck about vulnerabilities. I don't give a fuck about your O-days. Enough. We get it.
We allowed them to set the narrative around this shit, and that's where we are.
Never made any fucking sense. It never was the problem. That's the actual capture of this.
I remember on this podcast 10 episodes ago saying, please don't make me root for China. Please don't make me root for China, because this is exactly how you make me root for China. And here we are. Costin, that what you just described, you think it's inevitable? You think it's inevitable that we get this DeepSeek move next?
I think you will probably get a model
Didn't
like
they
a
just drop something?
1 trillion parameter model. Yeah, they dropped, who dropped? Jipu dropped this GLM 5.2 model.
Jipu.
Yeah, Z
You know
AI.
Jipu. Everyone knows Jipu.
Of course.
You know.
Yeah, my buddies.
You know them. You trust them. Jipu.
They dropped this model which people say is a Mythos killer. But it's like still small. I'm just thinking like if like at some point they come up with this 2 trillion parameter, 5 trillion, whatever, I think the only chance will be that you make the hardware illegal. Like the hardware required to run more than 1 trillion parameters model will be illegal to own.
Dude, if these people are saying, like, I'm sure they're lying because they have lied in the past about the hardware they used. But if
the Chinese?
The Chinese have lied about like what hardware they use to train certain models, at least as far as people checking the maths go. But if it's remotely true that any of these Huawei chips are being used for any portion of this process, then it's just a matter of time. Like, I'm sorry. Okay, we're going to deny them the thing. Are you telling me that the Chinese are not going to steal the blueprints for this thing? I understand that there's that it's not easy to do like mini tiny ultra 2 nanometer bullshit anywhere in the world. I get it. But like they will be able to improve, and this is a problem that does expand laterally, right? So I just don't know that any of these things are the right thing to focus on. I think the right thing to focus on is how do we make this stuff actually yield value at its current pace. I don't give a fuck if it gets better or not. It's really good already. You guys have done a great job. We're just in like this dick measuring contest now, and it's like this perennial thing, and we don't know how to use the damn thing.
Do you think two post-IPO public companies without this challenge of IPOs and messaging and all of this stuff, kind of things settle down after that? Are we rooting now? Just get your fucking IPOs and get out of the way.
Look, I'll be honest with you. I don't know shit about this. I don't know anything about how this stuff works, and I don't think anybody does.
Same
right?
for all of us. This is the reason we asked you not to fact check.
No, but to be fair, right? Like, I don't think anyone has a playbook for what to do for a $1 trillion IPO, right? Like, these people are way over their skis because there's no one on earth that knows how this shit works, right? Like, Elon just sort of rode in first and kind of, just Leroy Jenkins his way to that shit. And, now you're just you're like, ooh, it popped. Oh, it's deflating. You're like, yeah, it looks like any other sort of SpaceX launch, right? Like it's fine. But the thing here is I don't know if OpenAI would have filed to IPO so quickly if it weren't for Anthropic. Like, I feel like Anthropic filed it and that forced them to immediately file, because you get into this weird place of like, do you want to be the first one or the second one? What happens if Anthropic pops off first and it's like deflated? Do you really want to IPO? Like, do you think your brand is so much stronger? Or do you think that maybe like, oh, it's not the right market right now? And then from that point forward, but then from that point forward, you have a harder time suggesting that you're worth the valuation that you say you are, because now somebody made that shit real. Like, I'm pretty sure Sam Altman must be wanting to choke Dario to death for rushing them to IPO, because Sam understands the startup game, right? Sam partially invented the startup game, like the YC Combinator playbook of like how you get a startup and make it into a money printing like outfit. He invented that shit to some degree. At least he's been through it a million times. So like he knows the game. And I don't know who on earth would want to try to land in the middle of this storm, right? Like, you have been you have made it through to like stratospheric valuations with insane burn rates, taking a ludicrous amount of money. And now you want to make the numbers real in this economy without knowing what the fuck is going to happen with the private credit crisis, like everyone getting all jumbly and scared and shit. Like, this is when you want to IPO? Because I'll say this, the market's going to, if it crashes, then yeah, you don't get your $1 trillion IPO, but you have an excuse. If you come out now and then it crashes and then you tumble, then you have nothing. You just didn't prove the value of your magical beanstalk. So I don't know, man. I don't like the strategy, like the way shit's looking right now.
Meanwhile, we got a Five Eyes Security Agency's joint statement by all the Five Eyes agencies and in partnership with NCSC and CISA that basically says, hey, AI is here, we need to act now. The rapid pace of frontier development.
Very timely.
Who let them know? Who told
Practical actions, reduce your attack surface, accelerate patching process. No, I bring this up because now we're getting like this first time official word from the foremost security agencies in the world. And we're just like, hey, we got to act and like fix shit that we've been trying to fix for 20 years.
Put your shields up, bro. Put your shields up way, way up now. Now's the time.
Meanwhile, even as we spend an hour and 35 minutes talking about AI, like there are enterprises and security and companies in general just dealing with tons of everyday shit and breaches and ransomware infections and all kinds of things. And I want to touch on one. This Klue breach. KLUE is the name of a sales enablement platform. I think they do like competitive intelligence for enterprises. So back in June 12th, they disclosed a security incident describing an attacker gaining access to a compromised legacy credential associated with an integration service, and then used that access to obtain OAuth tokens that were used to connect Klue with third-party platforms, mostly like Salesforce. And then the attacker used these tokens to access the customer Salesforce environments, and there's a bunch of vendors that get caught up in this, including security companies. But the more I think about, like, as I was reading this story, and it turns out it's very complicated, there's a lot of shit happening in the background that hasn't even been reported yet. This is the third major OAuth token theft leading to Salesforce data compromise in this year alone. Third-party integrations like coming up as this weak link. And I want to ask Costin, I want to move the story forward and ask about protecting against this. Like, how do organizations manage and mitigate OAuth token theft? Is this something that's easy to manage so you don't fall victim to this? Is this a thing where the platform, this is just how it works and you're never going to get a hold of it? How would you recommend IT admins manage a world where this is a recurring issue and we have to mitigate it somehow?
I mean, obviously, OAuth is a very nice, brilliant idea which solves a problem that you may want to give some other people access to your data, or it's like the same idea that you want somebody maybe to be able to park your car, but you don't want to allow them to look in the trunk or something like that.
Right.
So you can create different tokens with different permissions, and maybe let's say you give them permission to read your data, or you give Klue permission to read your Salesforce data, but you don't allow them to modify it.
This is why OAuth was created, right? Because we didn't
absolutely.
want to.
This was why.
It's like passwords was a big major weak link. You don't
want to give them password. You don't want to give anyone your password. Essentially, you don't want to give anyone full control of your account. So the idea is you still maintain the control. You give them a token, which allows them to do a limited set of things. I guess the biggest, the drawback of this method is that whoever has the token is the person who can drive your car. That's the person who can drive your car, correct. So that's why, the devil is always in the details. Detail number one is, for how long is that token valid? So if that token is valid for 100 years, then whenever somebody steals it, they'll use it for 100 years, which is why one good practice is always to create these tokens for shorter period of times and renew them from time to time. So even if somebody steals them, you can immediately invalidate the token and issue a new one, and your application will continue uninterrupted. The other thing is that how do you store those tokens? So assume that you are the person who received the token, and with that token, you can, let's say, access another system on behalf of whoever issued the token in the first place. I think you have a duty to store it in a safe manner. And again, the devil, I think it's in the details. You need to store it like securely. So let's say you can leverage the token, but someone else cannot steal it. Like typically you do this using public key infrastructure, and you keep the signing keys on a TPM or like a hardware security module. And that prevents the theft part. But in practice, with vibe coding nowadays, nobody bothers themselves with details like securely storing the OAuth tokens. So again, the devil's is pretty much in the details. This can be a secure technology, but if you use it in a bad manner, in a bad way, it will backfire. And if people steal your tokens, they can do things. Of course, there's all sorts of technologies. I like this one, pinning whenever it's possible to kind of constrain the tokens. Like one very simple example is that you can only use this token from that IP address. So if somebody steals the token and tries to use it from a different IP address, it doesn't work. Or you can do more things like pin them to specific TLS versions or specific protocols, and if the attacker doesn't know the exact encryption algorithms that you need to use together with that token, they cannot use them, or like they use them and they trigger an alert, and you immediately terminate the token and raise an alarm. So for sure, there's many ways like you can try to make them better, but as always,
it doesn't sound like it's something easy though. It sounds like it's very, very friction filled one, and the fact that there's so many, I mean, just from the public reporting, so many companies are falling victim to it means that a lot of what you just described were not in place. And then I go back to the other question: shouldn't this be like the default? I mean, when I buy something from you and it's to issue tokens and so on, shouldn't this be the default? Like, why am I got to tinker and do all of this like friction-filled stuff that is not really sure about how things work? How do, like, Juanito, you got a thought?
I mean, this is something we've been talking about for a while, about like insecure defaults, right? That this is, when people were talking about secure by design so much, it was really frustrating because focusing on the design part implies a long horizon because you're not going to redesign the thing overnight. But secure by default is a much more approachable campaign, and one that I think CISA could have done a lot of good if they'd pushed that as the really hard line right in the beginning is, hey, like, yeah, sure, you're going to rewrite this whole stack someday. It's going to be perfect with no vulnerabilities. In the meantime, do you think you could maybe have like the safest, sane configuration by default when you deploy these things? And then maybe for everybody else, you actually have some kind of notification that lets them know that maybe that they're a little misconfigured, or that maybe they might want to recheck their shit, like anything at all to prevent these like extremely, I won't say predictable, but basically probable failure modes, because they're happening a lot, right? Those are moments when I really do look at the vendor space and I'm like, we're going nowhere, right? Because it's so obvious that the prioritization is one that is valuing some kind of customer satisfaction, like friction minimization of some sort over the product actually working the way it's intended to stop the thing that it's supposed to stop. Like, I'm not saying live with friction. I'm just saying that, it was like the whole fight with Microsoft over them disabling macros. And it's like, oh my God, fucking finally you're going to disable macros. And then halfway through it, they're like, oh wait, no, actually we're not going to disable macros. Like, yeah, I'm sure some accounting firm, a massive accounting firm like Accenture or some shit was like, what? Absolutely not. We need these on by default. Our people can't possibly be expected to click 2 buttons or set a fucking policy GPO of some sort that means that, that this is enabled. Instead, you need to have it default disabled for every human being on Earth to continue to get popped until the end of time. And for a while, they even rolled that back, right? So it's just a matter of priorities. And if it's this hard to argue for at least avoiding common but proven failure modes, then I just don't see what we could possibly expect these people to do for us, right? Like, secure by design is but a glimmer in our eyes if we can't get them to just configure the fucking things right.
I don't know. There's a lot of companies losing Salesforce data to this thing, and it's a supply chain thing that continues to happen, and it feels like managing this kind of session hijacking is impossible to mitigate. I don't know. While we were podcasting, Apple dropped iOS 26.5.2. So not iOS 27 is going to come in the fall, but we just got a point update. No CVEs listed. They just said this is a security update, which means it's a pretty big security update that you should patch and update your phones. Anything else to touch on before we go, guys? I think we're out of stories.
There's so
much. We got
much,
a million stories to get to, but we're an hour and 45 minutes in, and it's time for some shout-outs. Costin, close the show with some shout-outs, please.
Oh, it wouldn't be me closing the show if I weren't to mention some UFO, UAP stories, right?
Thank God.
Sorry. Let's get the segment. Man,
seriously.
Give the man his segment.
The UFO people are getting pissed at us.
And everyone is like, no, not that again. Like, there's nothing new except one story, which I thought was interesting. It was the guy. Do you remember that case when a fighter jet pilot was shut down over Iran, and then to all this operation?
Like right at the beginning of the war, he had to crawl up to a ridge line and stuff to be rescued.
We used the quantum
quantum field sensor, like what was it, the ghost murmur or something like that. That people were wondering.
The Russians are going to spend the next 15 years trying to
re-engineer it. Yeah. Exactly. I thought it was interesting that the pilot was saying that the moment that he was shot by the missile or whatever, he saw a swarm of Iranian drones around his airplanes, which looked like jellyfish. And this is one of the big ones in the UFO community, because there's these jellyfish UFOs. If you've ever seen one, they look like jellyfish, typically flying, hovering around with tentacles. It's very weird. And I thought it was what is he talking about?
So what do you think it happened?
There was a swarm of Iranian jellyfish drones around him. What is that? What is that all about? I have no idea. I just thought it was an interesting story. What I think, well, you know my opinion, right? You're
no, the audience doesn't
saying
know.
My opinion, correct? I think it's either because of the simulation, people from outside the simulation, they just want to see that event specifically.
It's that stupid Titanic submergible.
Yes, you want to visit it. You want to visit it. People from the future, you just want to see this famous thing like the Apollo moon landing. And then you get to see all these funny things, lights, drones at important events, throughout the time. And wondering what the hell was it? And it's just curious people, the Titanic sightseeing trip, or the Iranian missile shutdown.
Someone popping into our simulation. You mean people coming into our simulation to witness this stuff?
Yeah, or from the future, sure.
But what does that have to do with the jellyfish?
Oh, there's just the method to look into the simulation, right? Or the probe that you want to drop into the simulation. I guess.
Right,
I have no idea.
Could just be, of course.
I just thought it was a funny story, because it makes no sense for anyone to build a jellyfish looking like UFO. Why? It has absolutely no logic.
Is it possible that he could have been hallucinating?
Also, but that raises
he
a
just
bigger
got shot
question.
down. He must have been in a lot of stress, trauma, probably some physical pain. He could have hallucinated seeing this thing. No, I'm trying to be there with you.
Sure, absolutely. I'm not inclining in towards any theory. I just thought that was a funny story, like, because there's like nothing better. This is the best UAP story I could find the whole week.
Thank you for that segment, my friend. By the way, the magic money people miss the crypto segments as well.
Yeah.
So.
There's like so much happening in that sphere.
There's been so much happening with North Korean stuff more recently that we really should. Maybe we'll just do an entire episode on this whole North Korean ecosystem. With that, Juanito,
I thought it was funny,
shout-outs.
By the way, in Istanbul, like, you know, the inflation was very high at some point in Turkey, so people were converting all their savings into Bitcoin, Monero, Ethereum, and then the government had like a crackdown on cryptocurrencies. So I thought it was funny is you walk on the street or in the bazaar, there's places where you can exchange cryptocurrencies into gold into cryptocurrencies, into cash into cryptocurrencies, like all these things. As you walk through the Grand Bazaar, like the big bazaar in Istanbul, there's like such places that change cryptocurrencies into gold. I thought that, you know, it's like Johnny Mnemonic, William Gibson style future right now.
Sounds
in
like
Turkey,
exactly where you go to
bazaar.
Get scammed. Buying gold in a bazaar with crypto sounds like exactly where I want to be.
I don't even know who's getting scammed in that situation. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like if it's possible for everyone in a transaction to be scammed, that's what that sounds like to me.
Juanito, LABScon call for papers just closed. What was been any word there on the response? When do you expect to have an agenda? What happens next? Give us a quick LABScon update.
Well, you know, the CFP committee is reviewing. We have more submissions than ever before, so it'll be interesting. And I, as always, I will famously abstain until everybody has done their voting. So we'll see results, I want to say, in
Post
2
Black
weeks.
Hat, right?
Yeah.
We're going to announce an agenda after Black Hat.
That sounds right. Like, why?
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Let's
see.
Black Hat is what, 2 weeks away?
It'll be sold out by then, probably. So it doesn't matter. At that point, you're telling people for the sake of telling them, you know. But
gotcha. Any shout outs from your side?
Yeah, I mean, to the Hague Ticks and, you know, Monica Kello and everybody that's worked to put this thing together over the years. It's always been like a really cool little niche event, and it's a very particular mingling of people that normally aren't in the same rooms, and there's a lot of appreciation for putting that kind of thing together. So it gets me all the way out here. And it's an honor to you know, I've spoken before, but to be able to sort of keynote this and hopefully drop something worthy of that stage. So interesting times ahead.
Make a recording for us. Maybe
let's see. It depends if it's a good talk, maybe there will be a recording. If it's not, then yeah, shit happens.
Wouldn't know unless it's recorded.
That's true.
Costin, go quickly. Lastly, close the show with some shout-outs from your side. You always have your buddies.
This week I'll be in Korea visiting some friends, hopefully meeting some customers as well, doing a workshop on APT operations, things like that, applying AI to discovering APT operations. So shout outs to our good friends there, like our former colleague Song-Soo, I think is now with Zscaler. I hope we get a chance to meet, and to Jackie, also known as Min-Seok Cha. Like, I know Jackie for, I think, more than 30 years now, since he was with Dr. An in like the first, like, very early days. We probably met at Virus Bulletin 30 years ago easily, and he's still there, which to me is amazing. Like, to be able to work in this field in the same company for 30 years is just incredible. So shout outs to Jackie.
Podcast next Friday.
Of course. Friday night. Of course, we'll be broadcasting.
So you're bringing your microphone.
Gangnam, absolutely. Gangnam style.
Bring your microphone. We'll do a Gangnam
learn the
style.
dance, absolutely.
All right, with that, I want to just say thanks again to our friends at Thinkst Canary. Shout out to Haroon Mir and the team over there for rocking with the show. With that, we'll catch you guys next week. By the way, Japan is up 1-0 on Brazil in the World Cup.
No.
Which is like...
wow.
Peace out, guys.